Hey guys, it's Evan with Underhill Bonsai, also of the Little Things for Bonsai People podcast show. And today I will be talking about working on water elm, or the Planer aquatica, which is a native elm tree that grows here in Louisiana. But before I get into all of that, I did want to make some announcements here about certain things that's about to come up for the nursery, and just overall things that are happening more like nationwide for bonsai as well. So just to start off, I do want to mention that all the videos that I do here are not necessarily sponsored, but we are supported by Joshua Roth Tools. We also sell Joshua Roth Tools in our shop. So you can go over to underhillbonsaistore.com and check out our selection of Joshua Roth tools that we have available. Most of the tools that I use on camera here that I will be using on the tree are from their company. So very great tools, Japanese hand forged tools, drop steel forged tools. So they're all great source. They're a great source for bonsai tools and whatnot. And they also have a great warranty through us. If you guys break, chip, crack, or do something odd with the tool and it doesn't seem to act right, if you get it bent or if it cracks or the tips come off, depending on how severe of the damage of the tool is, we will actually replace it. So you just let us know what happened, be honest about it at the very least, and then we can get you a full replacement for that tool. Also coming up really soon in March of 2026, I have to remember what year it is, March 27th, 28th, and 29th is Say Bonsai. So that is the convention that happens here at Underhill Nursery. And you guys can come by and enjoy live boiled crawfish. You can enjoy live music with boiled crawfish. And also we have demonstrations put on from guest artists from around the country. This year we're going to have Carmen Leskovinsky from Michigan, John Eads from Portland, Oregon. Don't even bother editing. It's just, this is just the way I am. And then we have David DeGroot formerly of the Pacific Bonsai Museum curatorship. So he's still a great bonsai person. So we're having him come down here and share his experiences in bonsai with us, because this year's theme for Say Bonsai is going to be 50 years of Louisiana Bonsai, which is basically when the club in New Orleans was started. So the oldest club in the South is over 50, and there was never really a birthday per se for it, or a celebration. So we're doing 50 years celebrating when Vaughn Banting and the crew got together and started Louisiana Bonsai here. Also want to announce the first U.S. National Tropical Bonsai exhibition. It's going to be in 2026, September 5th and 6th. So if you guys haven't seen just really awesome tropical bonsai in the United States, that's going to be the place to go see it. I will be there displaying some of my own favorite trees from my collection. And the headliners, as far as I know for now, is going to be one of my personal favorite people from Louisiana, Don Ketting, and also Mike Lane, another one of my favorite people, Juan Andrade, and also Jennifer Price. That's correct. I just checked it on the website. So if things change, we'll talk about it more, but I'll be featuring Don Ketting on a future episode on my podcast show to talk more details about that. So you guys are interested in it, keep an eye out on Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcast shows on for Little Things for Bonsai People, where we talk to her about that. And then before I get too much further, of course, like, share, subscribe, and comment in the video below. If you're seeing this on a reel, or if you're seeing it, the full form on YouTube, make sure you comment and share and subscribe on there. It helps with the algorithm, and then I can answer questions. Because I know people are dying to ask questions about bonsai, so just let me know. All right, so I wanted to talk about this tree in particular, just because there's a couple of different things going on here. I was on a journey, per se, earlier this year with this species for a couple of reasons. So for those who've been following me for a while, if you listen to the podcast or if you've read my articles, which I don't know how many of those people translate over. Some people listen to the podcast, some people watch the YouTube, and then some people have just come here and have no idea any of those things exist. So on my articles on underhillbonsai.com, I know it's confusing because there's Underhill Bonsai Store as well, but if you type in underhillbonsai.com, that's kind of like my blog posting website. So it has a gallery of some of my trees, which I update every once in a while when I get good photos from Jessica Broom. Shout out to Jessica. She does all the photography for my articles and for most recently articles that will be featured in the American Bonsai Society's journal. So look out for that too. You'll probably see me this year. Now the time for this would be like right now, October 2025 is when this has been recorded. So the next couple of issues will include that. But if you look at my website, underhillbonsai.com, I've wrote articles about water elms. Over there, I was on a journey to find more information about them on more of a national kind of exploration, as far as how many of them exist out in the United States bonsai scene, if there are any. I've only found one, which is kind of, I don't know. I've asked around and I've done some hunting, and I found a gentleman that owns one in Alabama that was formerly a Vaughn Banting tree. So Vaughn Banting, just a quick summary about who he is. I know I've talked about it a lot on the show, and sometimes it'll come up in other videos, but Vaughn was our pioneering bonsai artist from New Orleans, and he introduced the flat top bald cypress style back in the 70s and 80s, and he started the Bonsai Club 50 years ago. So he was like our pioneer guy. And so water elms were one of the species that he also used, which was a pioneer species. When we say pioneer species, I'm talking about a species that was not being used in bonsai before American bonsai. So there was always junipers and pine trees, and even stuff like ficus trees were being used over in Asian countries and stuff, and they have migrated and they've been imported and stuff. So we're seeing a lot of other of the preferred species is what we call that. So Japanese black pine, Shinpaku juniper, Japanese maples, etc. So when we're talking about a pioneering species, we're talking about a species that was always here, and then someone went out and started collecting them and working with them and brought them into the spotlight. Now they're kind of like a universal tree now. The water elm, I feel like it was almost there, and then something fell short. I don't know what it was. Vaughn worked with a lot of these trees. They were collected in central area of Louisiana. They grow everywhere from here all the way up into Mississippi, North Carolina, and kind of across that belt of the south there, of the southern states. And they're a very fast growing tree. I've written a couple of articles so you can go to refer, like care guide, like how to grow them, what makes them happy. But just know that they are a deciduous temperate zone elm tree. So hot, humid weather, fully deciduous, fully hardy, so they can take cold temperatures, but just like their bald cypress best friend, which they grow near, they don't like being really, really cold. They don't like their roots to get super like cold and then frozen solid. I always tell people, like, a deciduous tip is to always keep the roots warm in the wintertime, but not super warm, but above freezing, so that the core of the root system doesn't freeze all the way through. And that's achieved by putting it either on a heating pad and kind of keeping those roots a little bit higher than the freezing temperature, maybe right above 30 degrees. And also, if you're in the south here, we just put our trees on the ground and we do what we call tucking in, where we take mulch or stuff like that and kind of use the radiation from the ground heat to keep their root systems not, keep them from freezing, because the ground in Louisiana doesn't freeze. It's simple. If you're in an area where it does freeze, then you're going to have a couple of issues. So other than that, one of the fastest growing trees I've ever worked with, and this tree was defoliated. And so it was defoliated to start work on it, because, it's defoliating these elms is not challenging. I actually have a smaller tree here to kind of illustrate how simple that is. So this is a little water elm here that's at our nursery. So this branch right here with the leaves, I just go like that. And then I take the next branch and do that. I'm sure you guys don't want to watch me do that for 20 minutes, taking all the leaves off of this tree, so we went ahead and just took all the leaves off. But it's just as simple as going in and finding the base and just pulling them off. It is technically a winter time in Louisiana, so they are dropping their leaves, but then it's just hot enough during the day. This one's actually starting to regrow buds, and it probably will regrow all of its leaves, and then by the end of this year, they'll be hardened off and ready to fall anyway. So we'll have a really late fall color on this. And our fall here is somewhere in January, February of the next year. So it's not even technically fall. Fall doesn't really hit Louisiana until late December sometimes. So another thing that's really important about this tree is that it was a cutting off of my tree. So I have a tree that I've shown at the National Exhibition in Rochester, New York, and this is a cutting off of that tree, and then it's a cutting off of a cutting. So it's like a clone off of a clone. So when you take a clone cutting off of a tree, it's essentially the same tree. So that tree was collected in Lake Catahoula. Lake Catahoula is a lake in Louisiana that is notorious for where they collect water elms. That's where Von Banting collected water elms. So it kind of comes from the source, if you want to say that. But so this is a cutting that we grew here at Underhill. This was pulled out of the ground, out of our grow field. And so it's got a really nice base on it. I found this tree in the back after we kind of pulled all the stuff that we had. And it's got a really nice nabari. Nabari means surface root in Japanese. It's got a really nice takagari, which is that first run of the trunk going up to where the branches start to emerge. So takagari means just the visible trunk at the bottom. That's the Japanese terminology for that. And then as we go up into it, we're going to make what's more what we would refer to as a broom style. What is usually like the style utilized for Japanese maples, they kind of have like the, some branches right here that makes like kind of like a first branch, kind of like a pseudo first branch. And then you have other branches that kind of fill that in, and then you get this broom style kind of look to it, and you can cut pads or spacing into it, or you can let it be a little bit more wild. So if you guys go refer to my articles on underhillbonsai.com for the water elm stuff I've written, you'll see that the broom styles there's a lot of variance. And broom style is very hard to explain unless you really see like a good one. And then water elms do this whole different thing where they don't grow like a typical broom. You can see that this tree, like the growth habit of it is most of it grows outwards, but then it'll change angles suddenly. And I like to get a lot of angular changes in water elms because it makes them more interesting. Because in nature, that's how they grow. They kind of grow all crazy and all over the place, but they always grow out. And that's really important to broom style. So we're going to build a silhouette on this tree. I'm not going to do anything crazy, like do carving like I have done in the past on other videos. I don't have the equipment or the time really to do that today. I'll just do it later. But I'm going to use a piece of chalk to kind of draw out pieces that there's like where the tree was cut down in the field right here and then regrown up here. And it actually has a little interesting character right there in the trunk where it was cut at one point. So I'll just draw a line to kind of show, obviously the taper in this is not the best until up in there. So it would be carved like that. So all this within the white up here would be carved out. And so if you can imagine that being carved there, and then this big giant chunk here, I would carve, all of this would come out, and then I would carve it down into here. So all of that would come out. And it might even result in this branch here coming off, but I kind of like branches that are close together. And when you do a carving on a deciduous tree like this, it's good to use what we call bulk, or just like the meat of some of these branch systems to kind of help make that look a little bit more naturalistic. So when you make a hollow and deciduous tree like this, it's challenging because typically it's against the norm or what's acceptable in Japanese bonsai aesthetics. So over here in the States, we tend to like to do a lot of carving. And so usually we're kind of poo-pooed on by other bonsai scenes that's like, oh, you guys have giant scars on y'all's deciduous trees, and I don't really care. It's just the way it's the way that the culture is here. So here's another line. So up there, I would carve into this trunk up here to fix the tapering there. So my trunk line kind of comes up, and then it kind of wavers into here, and then the top of the tree ends right here. So I'm going to do a little bit of cutting up here to kind of fix this. But to start, I'm just going to trim off stuff that I don't think is necessary for this tree's shape. So, and as I do that, I'll talk about nuances of the species and why they're important to me and stuff as we go. Okay, so when I start branch selection on a tree like this, usually we like to see the bottom section of the trunk have nothing on there, and then the first branch to be the lowest branch on the tree. This species, water elm, is a bush species, so they're a bush tree. They don't grow in their natural habitat. They don't typically grow into like a totally filled out kind of canopy tree. So if you imagine a tree at like the park, they're not that tall tree with a giant canopy that you get shade underneath. They grow low to the ground next to creeks and ponds and rivers, and they tend to look like a bush, which doesn't sound exciting, but for bonsai that's very exciting because then you can get a really dense habit on them. So when I'm working on them, I mean, yeah, like these branches down here are not great, but I don't mind having one low down. So I'll remove ones that are really close to each other so we don't have parallel branches running alongside each other, because that's not very attractive looking for most bonsai designs to have two branches like that, because then it creates an obvious flaw in the branching structure that feels unnatural. You want as much natural as you can get. So I usually remove stuff like that. But I'm not bothered by this low branch down here. It might fall off or die back in the future. I really don't care at this point because we're doing a different style and appreciating the species for how it grows. So I'll cut that off. And by the way, this is a branch cutter. I'm not using a knob cutter, but this is a branch cutter from Joshua Roth Tools. This is the intermediate to professional. They have like all the way up to professional grade, but this is the one right below professional grade because I'm rough on my tools. So just letting you guys know. I do have a knob cutter, but my preference is branch cutter for some reason. I just always gravitate towards that. This branch here, it does have a live little twig right there that I just knocked off. But I mean, I don't need that much of that heavy trunk down there. In fact, I like leaving these little spindly pieces on here. So I'm going to cut to there. And then this can always be wired out. That's poking up above and interfering with that. And then this big chunk here, it's going to hit the wall. That big chunk there, I'll take it off and kind of work it down. And I'm going to leave it kind of flat right there and not try to go too crazy because it needs a little bit of room to die back to. So I'll leave a chunk there. And also we have these branches that are kind of subset branches going off there. But I like the way that looks so far, just a kind of a naturalness to it. We come up and then we have another branch growing straight out of the middle here. This might be the one branch that I will kind of shorten up here and see. I like to see little branches close to the trunk on water elms, but not necessarily long, thick branches. So just something to kind of play with there. And I don't have a front picked out for this tree yet. I don't go, this is the front of the tree and then start cutting. Instead, I'm looking for structure and believability as an old tree. So you'll notice that I'm not like, okay guys, this is the front. I mean, this is actually not a bad front because of the way the roots are right here. They're wide, they're at their widest point, but the trunk is really boring right there. And there's a little bit of inverse taper in that spot. In fact, the trunk looks thicker and more even from right here. But I'm not going to worry about that yet because I'm going to make branch selections first that will work for the tree. And I can build a natural looking branch structure out of it. As I get higher up into this, I will actually clear out branches that are starting to kind of interfere with other ones because these should be mature branches. So mature branches should be flat and out, and it should have the weight of the older growth kind of weigh them out so that they're kind of down and out. And then the tips, like my fingertips, will come up ever so slightly. So a mature deciduous branch looks best in my opinion. This is a bonsai thing, you know, from my standpoint of what a naturalistic tree in the southeast Louisiana will look like, is the branch will sag down, but then the tips are always advantageous and young, and then they'll come back up. So that's why I cut it to have these branches that come out like this. See if that's better against the white wall, and then it comes back up again. So I'll clear out actually the branches that grow down, and then if there's a branch that comes down like that, it's hard to see, I'm sure, on camera there, but there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 buds in this one section. and it's alternating. So that means alternating means that the buds go back and forth. They're not opposite from each other. So wherever I cut this, that new bud, let's say I cut it there, there's a bud right there after I cut that. That's going to be the new advantageous bud, or hopefully, it depends on how damaged it is, or if it's ready to grow like that, it will grow this direction. If I were to cut here to that bud, it'll grow this way. So, you know, with elm trees like this, it is very, very like, you know, oh yeah, I cut this bud so it'll grow this way. I'll cut this bud so it'll grow. It does get like that thick, you know, get really in the thick of it with these trees. So, but that's what makes them fun, in my opinion. You can get a denser looking tree faster and easier. Let's see, I'll take growth out of crotches here and kind of clean things up as far as the branch structure goes. And I don't really want to wire too much of this tree. I will wire some things, but I'm not going to go crazy on it. So I kind of addressed all this here. And so I've got another branch in the back that's kind of like a weird back branch thing. So I'm like, oh, I thought it was going to launch. Usually they shoot across the room and they do something crazy. I'll leave this one long for now because it's probably going to be something that I'll wire. And then I've got a lichen growing on this tree, and I'm not liking it, so I usually take them off either with a wire brush or I just scrape it with my tool, because that will block buds. It'll intercept light to buds that I could cut back to. So always remove lichen. People say they like the way it looks, but it's actually not conducive to sort of photosynthetic activation of those buds. So always do your best to remove that lichen. I mean, it's all up in here, but this is the most common lichen that we have in Louisiana. It's this like flat, kind of weird looking light green lichen that just covers up everything. So, but then this tree will also exfoliate bark. So over time, the exfoliation of the bark, you could peel the lichen off and get a little bit more of that platiness off of it, and get access to the buds again. So just something to kind of keep in mind with lichen. This one is fine for now. Like I said, I'll probably wire that. And then that brings us up to this main branch right here. So I'd say this is a main branch. It's the biggest branch and the lowest branch. I left a lot of these little wild wispy branches down here just for fun. I might remove them as time goes on, or maybe later on in this video I will. But this trunk right here, it's going from a branch to a trunk. It has a lot of visual weight in the branch structure. So it's going to play like it's one of the tops of the tree. So usually whenever I have a top, I don't want it to ever feel like it's competing with the very top of the tree. So I'm going to cut to here because it comes up. There's a line in this trunk just like there's a line in the main trunk. So the line of this comes up and it moves up into here and then it goes straight up. And then there's these two branches right here that make a lovely kind of little pad for a kind of a crown or a top to this. So I'll cut these off and shorten that. And then it's got this other thick piece that's right here. Just for now, I'll take the height out of that. And you see, by cutting that down, and then I can cut these branches correspondingly to the padding look to it. Yeah. And once I set the crown of something on a tree like this, it usually tells me, like, I can look at it and say, okay, it should be from thickest to smallest to finest. So then this is still too big. So cut that off again. And you can see it comes up and then it kind of comes out like that. And then that grows back towards the trunk. So that's a no-no. So we're starting to get a convincing branch structure here with that. And then this other piece here, you notice that it's nearly as thick as the trunk itself. It's not going to work. So it's got to come off. So I just really, really simplified this branch, but I still have all of this out here. These budding information is all the way out here. And I can actually rebuild this branch really quickly. But you have to simplify these forms on these elm trees because they get so busy so quickly. So having way too many branches and having too much craziness up here will actually cause you a lot more stress in your design. You'll, be second guessing yourself. But if you simplify it down to what you need, then you can add the chaos on it. It's I kind of call it like having the body or the rough out design and then adding the details on top. That's how sculptors work usually. And we're sculpting this. I don't want to sound pretentious in that. It's, you know, it's just trimming. I'm trimming a tree, but we're working in the same way that a sculptor would think. So we'll come up. We got this group of branches here and the inside of this curve. I'm not too crazy about that. So I'm going to leave the one that has the best movement for now, which is this one that kind of comes more out straight from the trunk. And then I'll dial it back. Now I'm starting to think about silhouette. So this first branch movement here or trunk kind of comes out. It's a dominant piece in the structure and movement. There really shouldn't be anything that goes further than this, because this is going to add a lot of weight as it kind of refines back out and grows branches. So anything that's long and chunky, I kind of have to keep it in check. And that branch is so straight, I actually don't like its orientation at all. So I'll also show you guys, if I remove it, which I will, it also adds to this line here. So I'm going to go ahead and take that off. And there's a couple more obvious things as I get up here that I'm starting to see. Don't like those guys. Get those out. So the next obvious thing is it comes up, and then we got this really nice little movement in the trunk. It's like this weird cut, and then it grows up, and it looks like it fused, like two branches kind of just like met each other on the trunk right here, and they're kind of made this little weird movement. I like leaving stuff like that because it makes it interesting. You know, bonsai is boring if everything is just like boom, boom, here's where it goes, this is where the next branch is. And then you kind of get like that S-curve kind of looking tree where it's like curve, branch, and then the top. There should be weird things that the trees do, and I like that. So I want to make sure that's part of the branch structure. But then we got this long straight section, and you probably know what's about to happen to that. So we'll go ahead and get rid of this and simplify that because it was competing with this. So now I have these branches here to actually build something with. That's dead, so we can cut that back easily. To live, and I'm going to leave all this because I like the way that that's laid out, except for that growing straight down. And then here, this comes up, and again, it's competing with potentially the top of the tree, but it's so straight. As I come up the trunk here, I don't want this to compete with my top. So usually whenever I do water elm workshops, I'm called on a lot to do water elm workshops because I'm the only person growing them, as far as I know, in the nursery trade and for bonsai specifically. So so I do a lot of these workshops, and we're always talking about branches with structure and movement. And this one's very straight. It's painfully straight. I mean, all these other branches, this one's a little straight, but it's got something going on where I have a bifurcation, like you know, two branches. It splits into two. This one, it's just further up than this one, as far as where it splits into two branches. Normally, what I like to see is what we call compression in bonsai design. So we want it to go from the distance between branches gets less and less, and then also where the branches divide also gets less and less. So you want, because it's all about perspective of the tree, so you want it to look like the tree is getting smaller and compressed on the top because it's in the distance, it's up above you, you're looking at the tree from below. So this branch is so long that I'm going to go ahead and start by cutting it down here to encourage a bud to pop down here. I'd rather the bud pop from here lower down and denser than build something way out here that just doesn't make sense to me, and then wire this out and maybe see if that'll work, because you guys can see right here how dense of the branch structure it can become right there. I mean, there's buds within like a couple of centimeters from each other right here, so they can bud back really tight like that. So I'm going to start by doing that. Also, that branch just comes out of the trunk at a weird angle. It matches our first branch, or our first structural big branch right here, a little too much. So I don't know. It might be something worth either getting wire on. I really don't like trying to go in on deciduous trees, that is, and trying to put like a heavy piece of wire on this and then bend it out. Because on deciduous, I always tell people it's always better to just either guy wire and kind of move the branch slightly, or just cut it off and start over. Because it's deciduous, you can cut it back to nothing and it'll regrow. So instead of struggling to get these big pieces of wire on here and do all that, like grunting and stuff and then break the branch anyway, I'd much rather just either recut and regrow or take a guy wire, which is where we tie it onto the pot or onto the root system of the tree and just weigh it down, which is probably an option. We'll see. We're going higher into the tree, so we're just making our way up, making sure that the distance between branches is getting less and less, which is nice. We can see that it's starting to get a little longer up here, but I'm not too bothered by that. We got this branch is too close to that one. This branch is trying to go straight up. That one's too thick. And let's just cut that back a little bit. So just keeping in mind that I can't go too much further because coarseness in branches, like I don't want a branch, for instance, like this long, thick one, to be the entirety of that branch structure. I'd rather it be smaller as it comes out towards the bottom. I mean, from trunk to branch tip, I'd rather it get thicker, smaller, smaller, smaller until we get the finest branch. Like these really fine branches is a good example of what it can do. But I can't have that branch be that thick all the way out. So it's either stub it and then regrow it like that, which that's probably the best option for that branch, and then get in there. This is why I also use my branch cutter, because in these crotches right here where these branches tend to grow in a group, I can push that tip down in there, pop that right out of there, so it's not going to cause issues. And so let's finish cleaning this up right here. And this is where in elm trees, this is especially something that they do, is they grow in a cluster, because when they're cut back, there's just their buds are always in a bundle, it seems like, right at a cut zone, and they all pop out at the same time, and then they compete with each other until one becomes the longest one, and then the other ones die. So that's just the beginning of that. This branch has the most interest because it already has been cut back once and it's starting to bud. It looks like it's actually going to be the better branch. So I'm going to go ahead and just remove the younger looking ones. And I actually don't mind this one here, even though it's a little parallel. I'm actually going to leave it because I need the density here because, like I said, the branches need to be closer together. And then we get up to the top here, which is the glaringly obvious issue here, which is from here to there are no branches, but there are definitely buds. So it's really hard to see, but I kind of say it's like a potato. So if you look really close, water elms are really good because they're more smooth barked. You can see where a bud site will emerge. So there's one there, there's one there. It's like the eye of a potato. You just look really close and you see the little dark area right there. It's slightly raised. So you always want to make sure that there's viable buds in those spots. And once you cut stuff back and off, the tree is going to push back to those buds. So there is a good way to build that. So it's going to be a little sparse here, but ideally I want a branch, boop, boop, and then maybe something there, and then I can fill this in and keep it tight here. So looks like that's the best I can do with that. So as far as height goes, we're going to do the finishing the story, which is something we talk about. So we're going to cut it to a certain height, and that's it. We're not going to keep building. We're just going to cut it, and everything from there is going to be that distance. But for deciduous trees, I need to cut it shorter because I'm going to cut it shorter, then build back out and fine twigging, and then that's going to be the finished height. But I'm going to go ahead and cut it first, and then I'm going to illustrate that. So let me make a decision on where that's going to be real quick. That looks like the front right there, actually. Okay. So I was just measuring there. I took the approximate thickness of where the widest base of the trunk is, not the root flare, where the trunk kind of comes up and then it starts to taper. Right around there, that's the thickness of the trunk. And I do 6 to 12 times the height of the trunk. So I just measured it out, and 6 is like right in here. So I can go a little bit higher. And since this tree is skinny, then those proportions will be stretched a little bit further. So it could be 7, 8. As long as I don't go over 12, because 12 is when everything starts to be really, really tall and skinny looking and just doesn't look like a tree anymore. So John Naka kind of gave us those guidelines to follow. So kind of simplifies it a little bit for us. So I think that's going to be I had to think about it because I'm going to be topping the tree. And I like the way that, so here's the thing that happens whenever a lot of people will design their trees and cut back. They'll say, okay, well, this comes up here, and then this curves out like this, and then it comes up, and then it curves again. I like that. But you can't get attached to this because I can cut here and just regrow the whole thing again and make it right. Because if I keep going up into this, then I call that losing real estate. In bonsai workshops, I'm like, I'm taking away your real estate. I mean, you bought this tree for a reason because you like all this stuff. But if I take it away from you, then I'm telling you that your tree, I'm taking stuff off your tree. And people don't like that. They don't think that's fair. They paid for it. They should be able to keep it. Well, sometimes when you see stuff like this, you really need to make adjustments to better the tree. So we're going to take out this tool and make an adjustment. Because if my 6 or 7 times my height stops here, then I have to cut down and regrow out from thick to thick-ish to thinner to thinnish to the absolute smallest branching I can get. So we're going to start by going here. It's going to split the trunk a little bit at the top, but it will do. I like that a lot better already. So, and if you feel really bad about doing that to your tree, you can take this and you can actually make a cutting out of this. So that's the great thing about water elms. Anything you cut off of them, if you put it in water and sustain it until you can get it into good soil, and then just kind of make sure it stays really wet and under a kind of a misting system on the top, it'll bud and you can make like a nice little short tree out of this. I've got a lot of trees, so I don't have time for that. So we're going to do that later. I'll do cuttings and stuff and talk about that later. At the nursery here, we have several thousand of these. I don't need to take more cuttings right now. These are close together. I don't mind that, but we're going to cut that there and rebuild. And since I have the ability to, I'm going to go ahead and cut the top down, or the stub, more like. I'm going to bring some taper into the stub here with my tool. That's why it's good to have nice sharp tools, because you can make cuts like this without having to, I just took the skin off, or the bark off right there, but it's okay. But you can make cuts like this with your good sharp bonsai tools. I'm also not very tall. There we go. That's what they call short king, I guess. So go in, and I'm still on my tippy toes trying to do this. Go in and cut down and make taper into this. And this can be corrected with time, but when I put taper back in there, it'll actually draw the line back into the smaller branches. So fix that there. And I like using my concave tools because I'll make a concave cut. And as we know, when you make a concave cut, it heals better that way, because the wound, the cambium, or the healing tissue, falls into it. So, but I also leave it a little round in the middle there for different reasons. Y'all can watch my carving videos and see why. But I'll leave it blunt like this because it's going to have some dieback in there and it's going to reestablish. Water elms are really good at regrowing, so I don't have an issue with that. In fact, go ahead and do this real quick, since I can. And as much as I love using electric carving tools, you guys have seen me do it a lot on other videos. It's very dangerous. I am very well aware it's dangerous. Thank you guys for commenting. But yeah, it's not always the most practical thing in videos like this, or just because I'm trying to get the work done. But I'll cut it. That seemed to work pretty good. I actually cut that mark out of there pretty good. All right. This is actually a branch splitter, but I use it like a like a trimming tool in a way. But yeah, water elms are really, really good. They have a high coat it. Coat it is a terminology that, or something that they say in horticulture, talking about how well a tree can heal from wounds. And these guys are exceptionally good wound healers. Now, they don't roll over wounds. So there's two different ways to approach that conversation. They don't roll over wounds. They make cambium and callus tissue very well, and they can sustain a new vascular system around a wound, but they will not roll over a wound very easily like a bald cypress will. So you will have hollows in this tree, like especially right here where this giant chunk of dead is, there's going to be a hollow there. So there's no avoiding that. But just for now with my cutter, I'm making cuts to kind of smooth the line in the tree, and I'm sure it looks a lot better now. Yep. This is why I love deciduous trees, because it's always this thing where you find a tree with a good, interesting trunk, and then you make the cuts that are necessary to build it out. And then you can use carving tools, but you don't really need to. You can use flat cutters, branch cutters, any cutters, as long as you can get the shape, and then this will rot in the middle here, and I'll just scoop it out with a pick, like a mechanic's pick. Like this. Mechanic's pick from like the hardware store or automotive store, because I'm just going to get the punky wood out. I'm not really worried about doing fancy carving or making a deadwood feature, because it's going to rot off. It's a soft cored tree. The tree will sustain hard deadwood on the middle of the inside of that wound, but it's not going to sit there and have like cool little jagged gins, or a gin is a deadwood feature that sticks out from the trunk. It's always going to have shari. Shari is deadwood within the trunk, so it'll always have that interesting feature. So another reason why I love deciduous trees is that I can put on wire minimally and get away with it and say, there, I did work. I wired the tree out. I'm not being lazy, it's just it doesn't take a lot of wire. It really doesn't. So I'm going to grab a few of the branches here that I said that I feel like need to be wired out. So basic branch structure wiring stuff here. And water elms wire really, really good. I could take this branch and do all kinds of crazy stuff to it. But because the tree doesn't really have like a bunch of crazy turns and curves in it, like the trunk is relatively straight, I don't need to do anything like make it twist around in a crazy angle. I just need to add a little bit of movement and then encourage it to rebuild in that way. So let me get some wire on that guy. So usually I wire size is the same thickness of what I'm trying to move. Like I said, I'm not trying to move this whole thing. I'm just trying to move the end here. So we're going to move that. Boop. And make sure that these don't really fall into the same plane. That's fine. I don't really care about that. And your wire cutter also can trim branches too. You guys can argue about that in the comments too, but you can use a wire cutter to cut branches. You can actually do that. All right, so I think that's pretty much it. I mean, it's that easy. I mean, I'm going to put a piece of wire on that and move it a little bit because I can, and it's easy. But I think that's the only thing that's really glaringly obvious to me. I didn't forget about drawing the tree on the dry erase board. I'm still going to do that, so give me a moment. Okay. Now, I know it sounds kind of crazy, guys. Now I'm gonna find the front of this tree. So this is boring because it's like, whoa, yeah, that is just, there's this branch and here's the top. I've seen this so many times, and maybe that will be the front one day, you know, but not at my nursery. I like this a lot better. So from here, where this kind of comes out towards the viewer a little bit, and even the top comes towards the viewer, and then this comes forward. I like that a lot better. Yeah. And then you get this branch, and then even this little back branch matters a little bit more. As opposed to here, it's two-dimensional. There's nothing really going on back here. By slightly turning it, you get something so much better. So let me go grab my dry erase board and I'll finish I'll draw it up so you guys see what this is supposed to look like, and then we can talk about the future of this. Because this is going to be one of those trees that I'm going to take and we're going to revisit it. And I guarantee you in, let's see, this time next year, this tree is going to look insane. This is going to be all crazy, wispy, long branches and stuff. And I'm going to have chased it back probably 4 or 5 times. And we're going to build a tree off of this. So let me go grab my dry erase board. Okay, so I got my dry erase board. Hopefully it doesn't fall off. We had to reduce the light in here so we don't have glares. So I got the lights up ahead or up above. So I'm still going to have a little bit of glare here. I know that. So I'm going to draw it down here as best as I can for you guys. And then I went ahead and just did some editing at the bottom. I removed a couple of the lower branches and then made use of this. So we're going to draw the tree out for its line. I'm going to use a couple of different markers to show different things here. So. Okay, so I just drew out the basic branch structure here to kind of illustrate the overall structure of what I hope this tree will turn out looking like. And I might have over-exaggerated some of the things about the tree, like its trunk line or the roots or something, because over time, this tree will actually get better. Like the overall look of the tree will get better with time. Like the roots will actually get bigger. The branch structure, the branches will get thicker. So a lot of these things will change and we'll get closer to this image with time though. And I'm going to leave this blunt looking cut right here for now and kind of illustrate what that will start changing into. So there's the overall trunk. And so we kind of draw like a pseudo bonsai pot for this thing. So come out like this. And say that one day it's going to go into a container that looks kind of like that. Little cute feet on there, you know, it might have like a little bit of a lip. Like that. Just something really basic. So, and then we'll go in with the blue marker to kind of show what improvements I would like to do over time. Because I'm not accounting for right now all the twigginess on there. I'm just going to show you guys what will be added on as time goes on, as it grows. So the top is going to be the strongest part of this whole tree that's going to grow. And I know there's a branch there already, so I'll just add it in like it's not there yet. But as this top grows, this will begin to taper back into here again, and I will continue to kind of grow a structure up here that's kind of like a flat top cypress, but not. It's not flat top cypress, so don't really think that's what I'm going for here, but it's very similar. And then we'll have buds pop, and buds will pop off of this branch here, and the crown will build pretty quickly on this tree. It's just a growth habit of this. So the 7, I think the line for the glare, I'm above it now, but you guys should be able to see that. That's within the frame. So I'm going to draw like this is the overall height that I want the tree to be at from here to there. So usually the viewing point of the trunk. And then as the tree improves, maybe this branch will stay really small. It's just, I don't want it to pull too much visual weight there. So it'll be a smaller, little more interesting branch like that. We need branches on all sides of the tree to make it look balanced. So we'll add some stuff there. And I'm not worried about bar branches. I'm not really worried about it because as this gets denser up here, there will be more and more branches up in here. But as long as we maintain some kind of negative space under this curve and kind of let this breathe, that's better than filling that space in with branches. This part right here, this big first branch here, and there's a branch coming out towards us, this will be a branch structure that I won't be able to draw in here because it's going to be foreshortened. But as this grows out, this will look like another tree with little subset branches like this. And it'll continue to kind of grow out. And then the finest twigs will come out towards the extremities of this tree. So it will have this kind of structure if I keep adding little tiny details. And there's a branch back here and you'll have a space back here with branches too. So it'll have something like that going on. And I want to maintain negative spaces in between some of the inside of the curves and stuff here. And those things will be really easy to do in real time on that tree when it's actually grown out. But that's kind of the shape that I'm looking for, as long as it kind of has that isosceles triangle kind of thing that we talk about in bonsai. So it's going to have that shape to it a little bit. So I know I'm like a caveman over here erasing it with my finger, but this is what I got. But so yeah, like this basic structure here, it's a little messy. Let me get this actually looking like something. This basic structure here will give us a foliage overall, just like coverage of what we're looking for. I'm gonna go back in with green and draw in the silhouette. So our silhouette, this is the leaves that will be on the branches, will kind of look like this with some indentions and some blank negative spaces in between. And then it won't be perfectly round or pointed because it shouldn't be. It's a deciduous tree. And it'll come in further on this side. And then we'll have a little outcropping branch here. And then we'll have a little bit of foliage in the front right here. And then it'll have some foliage back here. And we'll kind of get this dramatic looking, lots of movement this way. And then branches on all sides. But it's still a broom style tree. So a typical broom style, when people think broom style, I'm going to draw a really tiny one right here. They think of, oops, like I said, they think of this, that little tiny trunk like this, basic roots, this is like a shohin broom, and it's going to have just those branches that come straight out. And it looks like a broom that you would sweep the floor with. This is broom style, this little just straightforward. But this is also a broom style. And broom styles like this can have the little canopies like that. And they're real cute and short sometimes, or they're real big. I like little tiny brooms. And then big, when it's a big tree, you have so much more room to play around and do something dynamic. So I know it's a little bit crude, but I tried to draw in what it could potentially look like. And then as I grow this tree out, this is almost real size of this tree. This tree will one day this will be way out here, and then this will be approximately here. So this will be a larger tree in some ways. So, and then this root needs to be corrected and cut back. But there's a lot of stuff down here I will need to finish up and correct. And this is going to be in quite a big pot. It looks like, being cut back like this, it doesn't look very big. But when you start thinking about trunk size and proportions and building out the branch structure, then all of a sudden you have this big looking tree. I've got a tree in my collection, the one I talked about that went to the National Arboretum. The trunk is this big. The canopy comes out this wide, and it's this tall. I mean, it looks gigantic, but it's just because of that big trunk to smaller branches, the small spinous twigs on the exterior. So this is what it takes to really build out that structure. So like I said, we will revisit this tree. It's currently off the market, I guess you can say, but we will have it here. If you come to the nursery, you can come see it. I have a couple of other trees that I'm working on and articles, but I wanted to make a YouTube video one for y'all to follow along, and when y'all come visit our nursery, or if you see other videos come up, you can see this one now to a much more developed, interesting bonsai from raw. And this tree, just to give some perspective before I wrap up, this was a cutting 3 years ago. It was put in the ground. It was struck as a cutting, so we took a twig like this small, put it in a pot. It grew out, and then the first year it achieved, somewhere around 4 feet long. Got a nice trunk on it. We put it in the ground. We left it in the ground for about 2 years, and it got this big in 2 years. They grow really fast. That's why it's such a softwood plant, because the wood doesn't have time to harden like that. We pulled it out of the ground to slow it down, and then it's been in this pot for almost a year, and it's grown to this. So I was able to work on this tree within the year's time frame that I took it out of the ground. So just wait till we see what this tree looks like next year. It's going to look crazy. And then the year after that, it might even be ready to be put in its first bonsai pot and start to look at display possibilities. So I would love to build this tree out from nothing to really something. And maybe we'll do a video later on where I'm like at a show and you see the tree at a bonsai show somewhere. That'd be really fun. So high hopes for this tree. If it died, then if it dies, then I'll give you guys an update, I promise. But I don't think it will. So thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you guys up on other projects that I've done, such as the trident maple, one of the bald cypresses I carved, and the buttonwood that I wired out. So we'll revisit those in the next video that we do.